Good afternoon, wrestling fans, and welcome to another edition of WrestleTalkShow. I'm your host, Joshua Zimmerman, here to bring you the weekend of WrestleMania, the block of wrestling we had for the week, and just a general show to recap it all and make the last three episodes kind of make a little more sense than they have. The last one was a 25-minute video that was kind of thrown together, so I kind of feel bad for that, but I wanted to get the news out there. So we did, so now we can take the time in another video right now and put it all together for you and give you more news and follow-up stories to those stories reported. Let's get into a breakdown of your ratings. Monday Night Raw for April 4th, the follow-up to WrestleMania, scored an overall 3.81 and peaked in the second hour of programming at a 3.93 with 5.78 million viewers. And the first hour got a 3.71 with 5.42 million viewers, and ranked number 8 in overall cable TV for Monday night. TNA Impact scores a 1.18 for its April 7th show. The Hall of Fame ceremony, as we stated before, but a little more concrete, scored a 2.36 and averaged 3.4 million viewers, leading into Monday Night Raw. Tough Enough Premiere scored a 2.55 with 3.33 million viewers and a number 6 overall cable TV ranking. In your wrestling news, in a recent UK interview right before WrestleMania, Sting was offered to do Mania but backed out because of the WCW fallout. In a Jeff Hardy recovery update, he's listed on the card for TNA as of May 5th, 2011. In recent news that we commented, Scott Hall hospitalized after an indie show. Well, that indie promotion is apparently using the footage from that day to promote an online pay-per-view. Representative from the Scott Hall camp said, "We find the footage to be very distasteful and not suitable for pay-per-view audience, and it's sad that the promoter has decided to air the uncut footage from the pay-per-view." Representative Gina Geneve told TMZ. So this is another TMZ.com report. Full details on TMZ.com. PW Torch is a little more reliable. ProWrestling.net, a little more reliable. But I verified. So, well, let's get into that for a minute. If it's the only thing you've got, and Scott Hall was their draw, that's kind of hard to say it's good or bad, because if the promoter's already booked for an online pay-per-view, he's already spent the money. So it becomes a toss of he's got to do what he's got to do, and if that's the only... It could be argued that if he's got more than that footage, then obviously don't use that distasteful footage. But if Scott Hall was his money maker and the hook he was going to use for the internet pay-per-view, and that's all you have of Scott Hall, what can you do? You could reshoot, but that costs money that the independents just don't have. One thing on a recent PW Torch livecast, I believe Wednesday or Thursday show, if you don't have a talent budget, a marketing budget, and just general staffing, 3 core areas, you're not going to make it real far. Your staff, your wrestlers, your marketing, your promotion for events, that all costs the independents money, and I don't think we look at it that hard when we talk about WWE or TNA, because they have already purchased equipment, where most independents are lucky if they have their own ring and setup. outside of anything else, you're talking about either, well, you'd still have, knowing Scott Hall, you'd still end up paying him for a second appearance, but you basically have to pay him and then pay to record suitable footage. And it's an expense that a promoter, an indie promoter, may not be able to make. A lot can't. They get one shot to do it. They get one generic flyer. And I mean, it's a little more detailed than this, but in a nutshell, that's what it is. You get one shot to go at it. And if your first couple shows, that's why we keep saying we want to do it successfully. Because if your first couple shows don't pick you up ground, you're not going to have the resources to do it a second time around. And if you take too much time off to regroup, you lose the fan base that you got the first run out of the gate. So it becomes a harder uphill battle. And that's spanning it long term. It's not even, you know, it's just expenses that don't get factored in when you're talking WWE TNA that you need to think about when you're dealing with a small time independent. The last quote I got, this was years ago, but a decent show was $1,200. I can only imagine it's going up from there as expectations have gone up, and every promoter that comes out of the gate wants to have that unique signature that identifies them. But just in general, to close, it's an expense re-editing and paying a performer a second time around, especially at Scott Hall's independent prices. Most independents don't have, so it's understandable. Um, Moving on, Sting speaks out also on his victory road and his match with Jeff Hardy, saying, quote, "I love Jeff Hardy and don't want to do anything to harm him. He has he has personal issues, everyone knows that, but some things are true and some are not. What is true is that it all came to a head that week and hit really big that night. I hated what happened because I wanted to give fans a great match, but I realized it had to happen the way it did. After all was said and done, I came to the back of the ring, came to the back to make sure Jeff was okay. I've talked to people close to him, and he's riding 10 miles a day to get himself in condition for our earlier reported May 5th re-debut. So if you go by Sting, his recovery's doing all right. Former TNA wrestler Shark Boy comments that Stone Cold, he took pride in knowing that Stone Cold Steve Austin, who Shark Boy's gimmick was a ripoff of, that Stone Cold Steve Austin actually liked his gimmick, and it was important for him to know that and helped him be the success that he was. Most of you remember him in the success he was in TNA. And yeah, apparently Stone Cold Steve Austin liked the gimmick, and it did a lot of wonders for Shark Boy and helped him with his self-esteem. Stone Cold Steve Austin says he could work 2 more years as a pro wrestler, as a full-time pro wrestler. The dream match that never happened in a lot of people's mind is that Austin Hulk Hogan. Or John Cena, The Rock, or Undertaker again, he says, are all matches. But the one match is Hogan versus Austin, a match that never really happened. He's living a pain-free life. Enjoys fishing in the outdoors, likes the minimal work and pain-free lifestyle. Living a pain-free lifestyle. So that's all good to hear for him. Now, just so we can kind of bring this full circle, what do you guys think about that? Let's go backwards. Did you guys like to see Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania? Do you think he made the impact that they were aiming for? A lot of people didn't seem to think overall that WrestleMania was anything to brag about. But what do you think of the bold statement of 2 more years as a full-time wrestler, considering Stone Cold hasn't really wrestled? And we were always told that the sooner he got out of the game, the better. That it ended when it ended because his health was that bad. But now he makes personal statements that he has 2 more years as a full-time wrestler. So I'm a little confused. I thought he got out when he got out because of he couldn't go anymore. Most of you remember an Owen Hart DDT where not a DDT, a pile driver where it left Stone Cold Steve Austin in the early days numb for a little bit. That added insult to injury, but that was actually a highlight of what would be a battered end of a career. I mean, Austin always pulled it out, but you could tell when he was hurt and when he wasn't. And it was always made that the wear and tear just was too much for him, and that's why he bailed out when he did. He bailed out on a note that I believe it was against The Rock, and he left it at that. But now, like I said, he's saying 2 more years as a pro wrestler. What do you think of Jeff Hardy's recovery? I kind of buy the whole Sting interview thing. I mean, Sting agreed that it was crap, but in an essence, it's what one friend would say to another. If it had to come to an end there, more or less, he's glad that it all hit there and Jeff got the help he needed. It's being assumed now that a May 5th return date is too soon, is the general consensus out there. And this label will follow him for a while because it took TNA a long time to respond to it. And then they were so happy with themselves when they finally did it. But me and other column reporters were begging for Jeff Hardy not in the present condition for this to be as under wraps as it could be if you were going to keep him on the payroll. But to put him out there in the condition he was in, it was almost like TNA didn't care. So, I don't know if all of you feel this way, but you're almost in a situation where you have to feel bad because Jeff Hardy literally had no choice. TNA pushed him in the direction he pushed. Yeah, it can be argued with any wrestler. You can walk away at any time. But I think a lot of us are in a position where if we were offered millions of dollars, a year, we would be a little conflicted to just walk away from it. We would think we were unstoppable too, I would like to think. Or in a Stone Cold scenario, oh, my neck's fine, I have 2 more years, I can wrestle. I think we'd all do that if we were looking at multi-million dollar salaries. But, I mean, for our months of begging, and then the way they finally did it, buried him, you almost had to. I want to argue you almost had to feel sorry for him because he had no choice. He had to still work, or he wanted to still work, or he had the mindset he could still work. So he had no choice because of his own decisions and that of TNA management but to crash and burn at a pay-per-view, which I don't think is good. It doesn't say anything positive about the company. The drug testing, it more or less said that we do it for the formality and not that there's any repercussions to it. We'll announce it, but don't expect to hear, like I've always argued. I mean, WWE walks a fine line with theirs too. If they like you, they'll skip you if they know you're going to fail, kind of the argument we made yesterday with Chris Benoit. But TNA more or less puts their policy out there and, okay, we did drug tests, but don't expect any conclusions. When even if there are, we're not going to tell you what they are. So basically what I'm getting at is for TNA to go months and months as Jeff Hardy should have been the champion and the one with the most TV time dealing with what he had to deal with. I don't really agree with, but it's a business decision that is just irresponsible. I think also on Hardy's end, Hardy could have walked away. Um, he's obviously not broke. He got married over the recovery and all that happy stuff. So he's not broke. He was never in a position where he was financially strapped. So you can only assume that he was working because management and Hardy wanted Hardy to work and operate at this capacity, which, brings up again, you could go any company. When do you help the wrestler and say, you know what? You're not going to work. You're not. It could have been 10 minutes before the Victory Road pay-per-view. They could have said, you know what? You're in no condition to work. You're leaving now for rehab. It was a joke in our title, but his meltdown could have happened backstage, and kind of like my divorce, and you all said my angle on the Kurt Angle divorce thing, but you all said it's a personal choice, and you're right. All of the above are personal decisions. But to watch a company literally watch a wrestler go through this and then stand next to them and go, you know what, we can use that, I think it's just as wrong too if you know that there's a legitimate problem that will eventually come to a head, especially the kind of problem TNA faced with Hardy that only had negative feedback for months and months and months and months. TNA was being ridiculed for the Jeff Hardy home video, which is still at WrestleTalkShow.webs.com in our video tab, Out of the Ring. Check that out. Visit YouTube.com for this video and every other video. Our friends at PWTorch.com and SmartWrestlingFan.com. New format for PW Torch, so go check them out. A lot of archive material. ProWrestling.net, another great show. Friend us on Facebook and Twitter at CWE Company. Send show-related emails to cwecompany@gmail.com. And remember, we're looking for columnists and contributors. So if you want to become a part of this and make it a little bigger, we can do conference calls, and we have conference calls planned, and multi-columnist input videos upcoming. A project that we're not lying about this. We are building our material. I looked at my argument yesterday from the Chris Benoit thing and realized that a little more has to go into it. That way, both arguments can be made, because I'm already getting feedback on the 25-minute video, let alone any project that we do with involving Chris Benoit with the Wrestling Geniuses. So I don't want to get caught with my pants down. But to close that last topic, though, when is the company just as much to blame if you're going to take a person's real problem and exploit that to where instead of getting them help, let's exploit it, make money off it, try to make money off it, and then get them help when there's no other option? And then, what do you think about Sting's announcement that he walked away from a WrestleMania deal? Would have been a huge payday. Huge names on the card, Undertaker versus Sting. People would have seen it. People were rumoring that that's what it was. People wanted it to be that's what it was. But you can't really, it's an interesting reason why he declined. Because of WCW and how WWE treated the buyout. And I think that will haunt WWE when it comes to getting Sting every time they go after him. Because I doubt this will be the last time. I'd like to predict here that among Triple H versus Undertaker, that WWE tries within the next year before WrestleMania to get Sting again. The Rock's already been on the Tonight Show promoting his match with Cena at WrestleMania 28. So we're disappointed with 27, but 3 days, 4 days after, a week after, we're already promoting 28. And it leaves a lot of bad taste in the mouth if you're someone who, you could argue it either way. I split the cost with 3 other people, but it still comes out to what it comes out to. We all contributed to a pay-per-view that I don't think was as well-rounded for a WrestleMania as it could have been. I mean, Triple H Undertaker ran a little long, and the end of Cena and Miz was kind of rushed, but you needed that long. You needed that 10 minutes, and shame on WWE for not gauging it, because your crowd was more or less dead outside of that. And what does it say for WWE still to this day if one of the legends of wrestling, Sting, still does not like the way you handle a WCW buyout? And like I always projected, here's a concept, and I'll bring it up again. You can visit this concept again multiple times on the now 101 videos of YouTube.com, of WrestleTalkShow at YouTube.com/CWE Company, where Vince could have corporately taken control of all WCW and ECW, but kept all the players in play. That way it looked like competition. Vince could still get all the paychecks, all the dividends from owning both companies. And as we reported, he got ECW for $250,000. He basically again went to court with Paul Heyman, paid all of Paul Heyman's outstanding credit card debts, and got the company by default, because since Heyman couldn't pay for his bills, the only thing he could put up is selling Vince ECW. And like WCW, we watched ECW come into WWE and slowly get dismantled to what WWE wanted to make ECW. And you quickly seen that it lost its following. And the WWE mold doesn't fit everything. Where I argued that Vince could stand as chairman of all 3 companies, payments could come in, dividends could come in to one source, but make it look like Eric Bischoff is still running WCW. Make it look like Paul Heyman still runs ECW. This way you could still have a ratings back and forth, but sort of with yourself, and the fans wouldn't know any different. They would all be WWE employees, but both companies would be subsidiaries. And I think if you would have ran it on its separate platforms, on separate shows, on separate nights, the true wrestling fan, like I always argued, you had wrestling for basically every other day of the week. When you included, this was still back in the Sunday Night Heat days, when you looked at the week of wrestling, you basically had a Monday night, a Wednesday night, a Friday night, and a Sunday night. And what was ECW? Saturday nights. So that worked if you had nothing to do on a Saturday night. And there was a particular fan base for hardcore Paul Heyman ECW style wrestling. What WWE did to ECW and WCW combined were not the platforms, and they wanted to break both. Vince wanted to make it clear that he owned both companies, and I think that was in the end the demise of both companies, where they just get, at the end of it, the talent ends up getting released and the brands get phased out of WWE, but WWE still owns all the archived stuff and copyrights, so still makes money off it at the end of the day, even though hundreds of wrestlers and 2 companies have been demolished. So you tell me if Sting doesn't make a valid point. And what, just bring it up again. Would you have paid to have seen that match, Sting versus Undertaker? Would that have been a bigger draw for you than Triple H versus Undertaker? Even though a lot of fans spoke up and said that Triple H versus Undertaker was the pop for the night. Could WWE not worry about the $1 million buy rate benchmark if it was a Sting versus Undertaker compared to a Triple H versus Undertaker? And what do you think of them more or less forgetting about 27 and fast forwarding right to this next year's WrestleMania? It's kind of like, thanks for spending $60, but we weren't really on our A game for that one. Stay tuned for next year when we get our shit together. Just, what do you think of the Scott Hall stuff? Is the promoter wrong? I think Scott Hall shouldn't be performing. If he's got this many medical ailments and is on 10 different medications for what quote unquote various ailments, then he shouldn't be performing. Then you wouldn't have incidences like this where the only footage a promoter has is bad footage of Scott Hall. There's drunk footage of Scott Hall that I'm sure looks just as bad, but the internet's the internet. It's once it breaks, it's out there. That's why I really don't mind apologizing or coming back on something that I say, because once you say it, people run with it. So, I think as far as Scott Hall is concerned, Scott Hall should be checked out and no promoter should take him on, especially when you find out after the fact that he was reviewed before the match as sketchy, performance-wise. Why would you want that on your card? If you're an indie promoter, you're trying to separate yourself. If we wanted to see a messed up Scott Hall, we could watch old school WCW footage. And that was a bash on him, but that was just to break the ice. All I'm saying is, whether you're WWE or a small time company in, I don't know, Denver, Colorado, why would you spend the money, especially like I assume is a reasonable sum for Scott Hall per appearance, and not be sure of his appearance, not be sure of his ability to perform? That would be like WWE sinking all the money into The Rock for WrestleMania and then Rock not showing up to WrestleMania. Or them coming out and saying 20 minutes before he's supposed to come out, we contracted him, but we're not sure if he's going to be able to do the work he was hired to do. Scott Hall's already made the money. I'm just saying from a promoter standpoint, why would you pay him all? Once I got his bill of health back, I'd say, all right, I have to pay you for coming out here, but my own doctor or whoever reviewed him as sketchy doesn't think that you're at full capacity compared to my other roster. Here's your travel expenses, and you're welcome to stay for the show, but I'm not going to be able to use you, because it goes back to what I argued before. Independents take harder hits than are discussed with your pros when it comes to costs, because the pros have indispensable cash, whereas the indies, like Dragon Gate, you're noticing they market one way and they stick that way because they don't have the budget right now to venture bigger, better, badder. Not to use WWE's copyrighted things. Visit 2 videos ago to see what I mean. But just pay him for his travel, and you want a flawless show if you're an independent. You want that fan base to grow and come back. And like I said with the usage of the footage, for an independent, if that's the best he's got, that's what he's got to work with. And Scott Hall should come to an end. Like, all these representatives are quick to defend him and quick to call the promoter out. Where were these people when Scott Hall is trying to wrestle? And he's got all these ailments, extremely low blood pressure and all these other ailments. Why is he being encouraged to wrestle If he can't perform, he should be a promo cutter. If he can't promo cut and or perform to push a promotion, independent or otherwise, where are these friends and representatives when he has these horrible experiences? I'm just saying. For all this and more, visit WrestleTalkShow.webs.com. Visit our online forum. Comment on an existing topic or post your own. Comment directly at youtube.com/CWE Company. Directly under any video you watch. Remember to like it, rate it, and comment on it. Your feedback is important to us. Again, we hope you were as dissatisfied with WrestleMania as we were. We can hope for next year, but we've got a whole year of work to do. And the general consensus is WWE, we need new stars and we need them now. Stop burying Sheamus and Daniel Bryan and Wade Barrett. Let's start pushing them up and replacing some people because it's coming. Vince, get ready to hand the torch. You're going on 30 years. Maybe it's time for an overall platform change, and you put some things in motion that indicate that that's the direction you're heading, that Triple H can just take the reins of a prefabricated structure of a company. So if that's what you're doing, putting little things in here so your company runs without really having to be run, then that's great. Until next time, visit us on Facebook and Twitter at CWE Company. Show related emails, or if you'd like to write a column or a bit for us, send your submission to cwecompany@gmail.com. Stay tuned for our next video, folks. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.